Now I'm going to draw your attention to the drum output section down here at the bottom of Kong. I've set the kicks to come out of 3 and 4, as you can see. Snares come out of 5 and 6, and those lonely hi-hats coming out of 9 and 10, because the snare and kick didn't want to be anywhere near such a loner since they're so clicky. Get it? Let's move on. Hit tab. And as you can see, I've dragged the kicks outputs from 3 and 4 into a spare channel in the mixer. Same with the snare, and same with the hi-hat. In fact, let's move that hi-hat along. As I said, the kick and snare aren't fans. However, we want to do a bit of processing before we put them into the mixer. So I'm going to close up this drum and effects, tidy it up a little bit, and we're going to move the snare into a compressor. So, create a compressor. Let's move all these out of it, and drag the snare, which was 5 and 6, to the input. And we're going to next create an EQ, which is automatically connected up, and we're going to take that back into the mixer. And let's do the same with the hi-hat while we're down here. It's automatically connected up, so you have to put it back. So 9 and 10 into the EQ, and then back into the mixer. Okay, so for that snare compression, we're going to turn the attack down a bit, just so it has a sharper start. Then bring the release right down, so the end of the sample is really brought up. The EQ is what's going to make the biggest difference here though. At the moment, the snare lacks definition, so we'll lose the extreme low end first. Hit the low shelf on, and take it to the lowest frequency it can, lowest gain, and highest Q. This has the convenient side effect of slightly boosting around 180 Hz, where a good punchy dubstep snare should really be hitting. So listen to the difference without and with. So much punchier, and it gives it more room for the basses and kick to live in the frequencies we've cut out without the track getting too muddy. Next, cut a small notch with param 1, around 700. Hold shift if you want more control. With a Q of about 1.5, nice and wide. And let's take it down about 5 decibels. Just to clear up that mid-range. So if we have a listen to that, and without, hear the difference? Much clearer. We're also going to boost the high end with the high shelf. It's by around a couple of decibels, right down at 4 kilohertz-ish. Let's get that full Q. So it gets all those frequencies pushed up a bit. So overall, without the EQ, and with it. Much punchier. For the hi-hat, I could hear some ringing that was a bit too piercing, so I'm going to notch that out, turn on param 2 with a frequency, let's turn it right up to about 13 kilohertz, 13.5. Bring the gain down about 5 decibels, and take that Q down a little bit as well, widen it up. So if we have a listen to that, and without, hear that that's a little bit clearer now. And you can find these piercing parts by bringing up a band of frequencies, just fully like this, if you scroll it through all the frequencies available, until you find that bit that's just really unbearably piercing, and then just bring it down. Remember though, that these are just guidelines that I've used for these specific samples. Different samples are going to probably need different EQ settings, but hopefully this will give you an idea of the kind of things to try doing. And before we move on to the voodoo that will make the beat really shine, let's add some reverb to the snare. We could do this in Kong, with the bus effects here, but I prefer the sound of the reverb from RV7 for this instance. So, right click and create an RV7 digital reverb. Just below the mixer, we're going to change it to medium room, keep the size in the middle, take the decay up a little bit, so it rings out, and keep the damp there, just so we've got a reasonable amount of high frequencies, but not so many that it makes it too tinny. Make sure that the dry wet is fully wet, and turn the auxiliary on the snare, which is here, up to about 14. Any more than this, and you start to drown your snare in reverb. And snares can't swim, so that's a really cruel and unusual thing to do. Alright, so now we've got ourselves a nice beat with a suitably big snare. It's time to add the real magic. We're going to be using a technique called parallel compression to really lift the beat and make it pop. First things first, we're going to need another mixer, so we can have another auxiliary return. So, create it. Let's move it up. And let's link it so that the output of the other mixer goes to the input one of the inputs in this mixer. And then that goes out into the combinator. Now, it might seem pointless, and you might be thinking I made you make another mixer for no reason just to irritate you as a lame joke. And as much as that is something I plan to do one day, this is not that day. We need this mixer to add a compressor as a send. Usually a compressor would be used in series with the effect going through it to shape the sound. But by using it as an ascend effect, you effectively double up the sound, preserving the punch from the original and getting the loudness of the tail from an overcompressed version. You can then mix the two together to taste. So we need a compressor. So right click, create M-class compressor. We're going to turn the aux to about 3/4 of the way around, so that way we're sending a lot of signal. And then on our compressor, like a low self-esteem chav girl on a night out, turn the makeup gain to full. Just for the input should be fine. Bring the threshold as low as it will go, and the ratio right up to infinity. And beyond! Anyway, bring the attack right down, so there's no punchiness. And we'll get the punch from the original source sound. And then the release right down, so the tail end of the sound is brought up nice and loud. Now take a listen with the parallel compression. And without. See what I mean by it adding that magic fullness to the sound? There are a few more steps we're going to take to add to the sound. Firstly, a filter so we can modulate the beat in, which is a quite popular technique in modern dubstep, and then a maximizer to bring the volume up and apply a nice limiting technique that Reason has called soft clipping. So first that filter. I'm going to make an ECF42 envelope controlled filter, and it's automatically gone out from the master out of the mixer into the filter into the combinator. We're going to make sure the res, envelope amount and the velocity are all down. Hit the LP24 mode so it filters out even more of the sound. And in the combinators programmer, hit show programmer, select the filter, and for rotary 1, choose frequency. Now by moving rotary 1, we can do that cool filtering effect. Now by right-clicking on rotary 1 and selecting edit automation, we can look in the sequencer where we've made a track lane so we can edit the automation. Condescending tone of voice aside, now it's time to draw some envelopes. No, not like that, silly. Using the draw tool. Let's put in a simple envelope starting about halfway up to fully open. And take a listen. Voila! Awesome filtery goodness. And make sure that if you open it up and hit the edit mode, that this little thing here, this little static value, is right at the top. If it's any lower, then when you don't have an envelope here, the filter will close up and it won't sound as bright and powerful as it should. Phew, almost there. Lastly, go back to the rack and create a maximizer. I'm going to move that up, just so it has a nice logical progression. And this maximizer is going to be the last step between the filter and the combinator. Then turn the soft clip up to full, and make sure you got soft clip turned on, and making sure the limiter is not on. Now, this might seem weird, but what soft clip does is add a nice delicate distortion, as opposed to the that hard clipping would give you, which limits the signal whilst retaining a lot of the punch of the sound. Seriously useful. So if we bring the input gain up to about 3/4 and check the difference between limiting and soft clipping. So here's soft clipping. I'll just take off that filter for a second so you can hear it. So here's soft clipping. And here's limiting. So soft clipping and limiting. A definite difference in punchiness. And there we have it, a dubstep beat like a force-fed, violent boxer that's taken too many hits to the head. Thick, full, and punchy. The last step in part 3 is to add a loop on the top for a nicely filled out top end in the frequency spectrum. So head over there now.